Hello, everyone. A little groggy. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my behind-the-scenes DMLA live stream, Crafting the Golden Vault, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Keys from the Golden Vault. We are playing characters Cherie, Elowen, Stacey, Tavine, or Vero. The stream is not meant for you, be full of spoilers. The rest of you are always welcome. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. You can join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below if you'd like to support the channel. Please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. You can also support us by shopping for your tabletop games, CCGs, miniatures, RPG supplies, and more. Our sponsor, Noble Knight Games, using my affiliate link. For campaign, we use Roll20. For streaming, I use OBS Studio. My schedule is a little off this week because we actually ran our patron game last night. Usually it's on Thursday nights, and but I'm busy tonight, so I had to do it on Wednesday, and it was an epic, very long one because kind of the end of a section that we're on. I don't want to tease too much about it, but it definitely went into extra innings, and I think we are all exhausted and groggy from it. I'm still drinking coffee, even though it's 11 a.m. right now. I won't even admit to what time my wife let me sleep in today. Bless her, forever. But I at one point I was close to canceling the crafting, but you know what? I was like, it's holidays. We're fixing to not do a bunch of crafting episodes and stuff, so probably good to go ahead and do it, and especially refresh myself with what the hell's going on, because we are going to do D&D tomorrow, so I at least need to have something prepared for that. Although, because I know that we're going into a break, it means I don't want to go necessarily too far into our next big session, I guess. So I'm just kind of still getting ahead and talking about Tockworth Clockworks and that whole mission without probably ushering my players too far actually down that mission, so that we can, mainly because whenever we come back from the break, which again will be I keep saying break, that's probably going to be about 2 weeks off. So we'll do tomorrow's session, and then it'll be 3 weeks later before we actually play again. And we all know that, like, I'm gonna have to re-explain everything about the mission and everything to get people back on board for that. So it's almost not worth like jumping too far into like the start of the next mission, even, basically, so that way we can make sure to cover all that for the next session. Thankfully, we're actually still in the middle of the little mini encounter that I had concocted for my players, which is at Schemos, at Weird Bottles Concoctions, I think it's called, where they're trying to get Schemo, they're trying to pay Schemo back so that he can then create the antidote for Tavine and Cherie, because they owe him money for resurrecting Elowen. And the problem is the party came upon Schemo while he's being harassed by this other crime gangster group, and they don't really know the context of that or why. Although I've been kind of teasing the fact that they're with the Xanathar's Thieves Guild, because they literally have these cool little miniature Beholderkins, which I totally stole from Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Just a really cool idea of a creature that takes all the random debuff stuff that Beholders can do and turns into like a little tiny, probably like a CR1 maybe, if that creature. It's actually CR half. Okay, so very, very, I mean, like one hit kills them. But I've been very impressed with this battle and how long they've lasted, because they've been behind, enemy lines, and that's like the perfect use of them, is they're just constantly pinging the party and forcing them to make saves for various debilitating effects. So that's been a lot of fun. I've been very pleased with them. Cherie basically changed the whole context of this fight by blasting the inside of the building with Stinking Cloud, which was a great move, but forced us to, of course, fight out in the streets. But I enjoy the fact that the party kind of split up a little bit, which is fun. Vero even went around the back to rescue Schemo, which was awesome because there was an opportunity to do that. But he also ran into the boss, which I'm remembering, folks might have to back me up on this, but and actually the chat log is preserved, so I can look at it from there. For some reason, whenever it was the boss's turn, who I named Rufus, he's even though he looks like a bugbear, I mean, he is a bugbear, but I'm using the tough boss stat block, by the way. He ran after Schemo through the window, and then Vero, I guess he readied his action. Or no, sorry, he used his reaction, that's what it was, because Rufus didn't notice him, so he was going to leave his attack range. So Vero was able to get off an attack of opportunity, which rogues love because he can use a sneak attack. And then he used his sneak attack to trip Rufus. And I think that knocked him prone because I failed. For some reason, I don't remember why, maybe it was just late or something, I then ended the boss's turn, and then we moved on to the start of the next round, and then that's where we stopped the session. Which means I never actually took, like, his action. Like, just because the boss was affected by an opportunity attack via a reaction and was knocked prone doesn't mean he suddenly skips his turn. So I totally screwed that up. And I think people who are like going to be listening or watching this episode will be like, well, wait a minute, why didn't the boss get to do anything? And I didn't mean for that to happen. So clearly I need to remember at the start of the next session that he's, in fact, we're actually going to drag him up here to remind me. That's a good way to remind me. We're going to put, him at the very top of the initiative. And that way, I'll remember that he gets to like stand up and actually try to bludgeon Vero a little bit. And because he's knocked prone, I mean, he did take some movement to get over here. He'd probably only be able to stand up, so he wouldn't be able to chase after Schemo effectively. But he will try to beat the shit out of Vero. Now, these guys are not meant to fight to the death. There's already lost a lot of people. But the interesting thing is they don't necessarily know they've lost a lot of people. So I was going to have them flee after they've been reduced by half, or if the boss went down. But a lot of them don't actually know the fact that because the battle got so split up, a lot of them don't realize that they've actually lost a lot of their own members. So there's 3 of them down, I think. And there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them up, plus the 2 Beholderkins. So they would be close to fleeing, except, again, they don't really know what's going on at the front door. Probably once Stacey intervene, especially once Elowen shows up, assuming she'll be at tomorrow's session, and they start splitting up and going after more folks, then I would probably start trying to flee. I don't know if I need to conjure some kind of magical way of getting my enemies to escape. That always feels kind of bullshitty, but like I didn't really plan on, them being able to interrogate Rufus or anything like that. So mainly because this really was kind of a one-off encounter, and I haven't honestly developed anything from there. It's just kind of, it just depended on how this fight went, actually. I mean, I guess the players could try to just take him out completely. I want to try to at least get 1 round with the boss, and then depending on how this plays out back here, and if more reinforcements come, then the boss could be like, fuck this, and he actually spends his whole turn, like, basically running away. And maybe the Beholderkins will try to back up the boss, and they can zap people if one's still alive, for example. I might have this one fly over and jack with Vero, for example, and maybe cover the boss's escape. So we probably are only going to fight like another round or 2, and then I'll have the enemies actually back off, because I just don't see these guys needing to necessarily fight to the death when they were just here to basically, I think, get answers. They caught wind the fact that Schemo didn't have all the ingredients that he was supposed to have for this potion that they were making for him, and so he's like, all right, who else are you working for? We know you're already working for the Zentarum, but we figure you were selling to us as well, so it was kind of squaresies. But now you're working for this other faction. Are they also, Zentarum, or is there a new gang in town? And so I like the idea that they were trying to get answers about the party. And once this party shows up, Rufus is like, all right, well, you've answered my questions, Schemo, that you're working with this new gang. We'll remember you all. And so maybe this is kind of a tease that the party's made some powerful enemies by, continuing to work within the criminal underworld kind of a thing. If the players kill everyone, then would the Xanathars know who killed their goons? If they kill literally everyone, then probably not. But I can handwave that and just, say that they figured it out at some point. Hopefully we can at least have like a single beholder fly away, or somebody can escape basically to kind of report on the party would be the most useful thing. And I don't plan on having this whole campaign in Waterdeep. This is not a Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign where we're dealing with all these criminal factions, although maybe I could transition to that if that's something the party's actually enjoying more than doing these kind of one-off heist missions, because there is a little bit more of that in Waterdeep Dragon Heist for sure. I pick one of the, I just pick the Xanathar Thieves Guild faction. Maybe I can integrate that whole dungeon or something if I wanted to. The only thing I was planning on doing was the Masterpiece Ambrosio mission, which would take place in Waterdeep, would be the Thieves Guild. So maybe I can either make, I was gonna make that the Zentarum hideout where they meet the rivals, but maybe we can change it to Zentarum as in the Xanathar's Thieves Guild. I don't know. Their next mission is going to take them out of Waterdeep completely, though, and that's the Underdark one, obviously, that we've been talking about in Lockford. And then beyond that, I think all the rest of the missions also go beyond. See, I haven't actually added them here yet, have I? No, I've only added Masterpiece and Ambrosio. Okay, so the other ones are. Oh, what did I write that down at? Yeah, because I think the ones that I could have in Waterdeep I'm actually skipping, which is Axe from the Grave and Veteran's Vault. The ones I want to use are Shard of the Accursed and Heart of Ashes, which the first one's a dig site, which should be far away from Waterdeep, and then Heart of Ashes is this creepy castle, village, mansion thing that's like deteriorating into ash, and that would also not be in the city, I don't think. As if it was in the city, that'd be a pretty weird thing to do. It would make like, I don't know. I think it would have to be more remote. And then the final three are extremely exotic and far away, which is the Modron Train, the Feywild Party, and then the stealing the Book of Vile Darkness from the Ifrit's Fortress. So none of those actually have to do in the city of Waterdeep. So I'll have to think about how much more I want to use that. I mean, it can be a thing, excuse me, where maybe this is just kind of the interstitial like B story that's going on between the missions, is the party has to deal with the kind of drama and the crime organizations within Waterdeep. So maybe that's an interesting angle, because we're not really doing like, you know, random encounters and exploring around like a normal kind of adventure would be. And I've enjoyed putting these together so far, but I am aware that like all of them are taking us a little bit longer than I anticipated. Also, this one alone, I really thought we could do it in a single session, but we did level up last time, which does take some time. I'm also looking to see how Clockwork plays out. So let's start talking about that one, because there's not much more I think I can talk about this other than the fact that I do plan on having these enemies not fight to the death. We'll probably only go another round or two, and then these enemies will actually escape, and then the party can talk to Schemo, get their antidotes ready. Schemo will be able to tell them, like, yeah, the Xanathar Thieves Guild, I work with a lot of shady people, this kind of thing, you know, happens occasionally. And, you know, he probably would have spilled the beans sooner rather than later, if he's being totally honest. And maybe the party, what's funny is, you know, I gave them the opportunity for Verity and Garrett to be like, hey, they don't have a job, they don't have money, and the players were like, oh, well, which is technically an option. You can tell them to fuck off, and they did. Or you could offer to help them, you could pay them, you could offer them a job at your bastion or whatever else, and maybe I would have rewarded inspiration with that. Same thing with Schemo. They can offer him like employment at their bastion, or offer whatever else that they want, and he might be willing to take them up on that, especially after they do all this together. Or they can be like, all right, our business is concluded. So those are all fair options, and I don't even want to necessarily bring that up in the chat as something that's like, oh, you were supposed to do this. It's like, no, that's always an option that they have, but they can certainly choose the path of least resistance. So, yeah, I don't want to get too far, at least for tomorrow's session, into it. In fact, I would love to tease, we can do the Bastion turn, and then we can tease the fact that their next mission is a deep gnome who arrives with the golden key, looking for the party, I guess, because she had been directed to this place. That's probably as far as I want to get, honestly, just because I'll have to, you know, why do the whole mission introduction when we're going to be off for so long, and then I'll have to just do it all again, basically. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. I have like gas building up in my chest. I know that I want to do a Underdark encounter. I don't even think I have a good Deep Gnome token, do I? Let's see. Is the default one? It's probably male. If can I get one female Deep Gnome? Yeah, it's just one token. Well, I'll have to find something to use for Nyx. Um, this can be a decent map, I suppose. I just want to use a really brief encounter, and I like the idea of she's leading the party down to Little Lockford. They hear a bunch of hook horrors, so they have to hide from them. I actually don't know if I want to use this map. I guess I could have. I'm trying to think where I can even do this encounter. If the party has to go south here, they're traveling from the west. This is from the Tessa's Presents, by the way. It's the Given Underdark map. And let's say the party is wanting to go south, but they see these. She hears the hook horrors coming one direction, and so she directs the party. So I don't even put them on the map maybe until they're like maybe here. There's a pit right behind them. That's kind of interesting. A bunch of spider webs. And then the hook horrors are like right outside, kind of loitering. But then like maybe a grell, like two grells, like rise out of this pit and attack the party and like surprise them. Just so we could do something kind of interesting. And the party has to be like still quiet or else they alert the hook horrors. That's actually an interesting concept. And again, this is me with my tried and true concept of combining encounters and thereby making them more exciting and interesting. So I'm like combining the hook horror encounter with the grell encounter. And it's really just DM, because noise is not really a mechanic in D&D other than like just DM prerogative of like what's making noise. So you could argue that like, you know, whatever attacks or it mainly kind of screws over the spellcasters, I think, because that's, I would assume, spells as well as any kind of lights or pyrotechnics would certainly make a lot of noise. Versus, and maybe if there was like a barbarian that raged or something, that would make noise. So it's really up to the DM, I think, on what makes noise and what wouldn't, and what could possibly draw the attention of some monsters that are just outside. I will probably need to do the 2024 versions of the creatures. Plus, I just kind of like the new tokens also. So the one bummer about converting or using the existing adventures that we have for D&D is they were all made before the new rule set. So all the ones that Roll20 includes are going to be the 2014 versions of the tokens and the monster stat block. So if you want to use the new ones, first of all, you have to own them on Roll20. And then you have to actually drag them on the map and add them. So a slight pain in the butt there. And I've had to experience that with Dragonlance also. That one has less creature diversity, but I've had to add all the creatures in there. That's a rare case where they use the whole monster instead of just like the head. Boy, hook horrors are bigger than I remember. Okay. So maybe something like that. And then the party can be like hiding in here. So we won't even show this map, because there's the dynamic lighting. And we'll put them like all right here, I think. And then there's a pit behind them, which we'll have to determine, like, you know, how deep that pit is and everything. But, and then because grells can fly, we'll have a pair of grells. I think it's two, right? Yeah, two grells. Fly up out of the pit and just attempt to ambush the party because they got that nice +6 stealth. Boy, that's another one where I'm not a fan of the token art. They actually put the whole creature on it. You hardly can tell what it is. So, kind of like that. And then the fact that there's a pit should excite the players, but again, these creatures can fly, so it actually screws the players over more than them. But I'll have to figure out how deep the pit, because like, that shit's going to come up. So I'll have to figure out how deep the pit is and all that. We just say like 40 feet or something. It doesn't have to be too deep. And then if the party is all right here plus Nyx, I'm thinking the dynamic lighting should help me with blocking off. Let's see. Although it's also pitch dark in here. Yeah, most of them can't see shit. Okay, there we go. So that's good. So right now, if you were just to get to the entrance to this cave, you would see the hook horror right there. So I like that aspect of they're like hiding from these really nasty big creatures. And I think that really gives off the flavor of the Underdark as being just fucking filled with nasty monsters, right? And this way, the party can be hiding from these creatures. They have very low maneuverability in here. I kind of wish this web wasn't here. It's kind of just decorative. I don't plan on actually having that be a proper web, I think. And they're hiding with their backs against this pit, but then out of this pit comes these nasty flying creatures, which I probably will have them legit roll stealth, and we'll actually see if they can get off the ambush. And I think I need to look and see ambush versus hiding, because that's kind of two different things that I need to square away. Because ambush means the party, I think, has disadvantage on their initiative rolls. And then the if you hide first and then attack, then I believe you get the advantage on your first attack. Which more than likely, if you're ambushing them, then you were hiding, right? Like I'm trying to figure out like how that would be one or the other, I guess. I guess you could always appear and go, aha, and that still surprises the party, but then the enemy's not hiding. That makes sense? So you could still be surprised, but have the enemy not be hidden at the moment. So the bizarre thing about the way the combat would work then, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, is if you're trying to ambush and surprise the party, then that means mechanically, don't you have everybody roll for initiative, including the DM, and then the party's like, okay, why are we in turn-based combat mode? I don't see. In other words, in case somebody rolls higher than any of the enemies, and the enemies are hiding, we've started combat, the players are surprised, so they rolled with disadvantage, but let's say at least one of them rolled better initiative than any of the enemy creatures who were hidden, then mechanically, isn't that how it technically works? Like everybody's in combat, the party is surprised, but then they know they're in combat. Like there's a really weird disconnect there where I'm not sure how to square that up, I guess. Or do you just have this sort of free round thing happen where maybe one of the creatures can be hidden, and then as soon as it does its attack, then everybody rolls initiative, and that's what starts combat, and then that creature that attacked, which it did get its big advantage attack, is no longer hidden. But another creature, that's probably how I would do it. So have one of them, that's what triggers the combat, is the one of them gets its advantage attack off. But then do you also get that creature to go on its initiative, or does that count as its turn? So there's a lot of interesting wiggle room there. I'm interested to hear everybody's thoughts on this system that I should have figured out by now after playing D&D for this long, but I don't know. I guess it doesn't come up as often. I guess it doesn't come up as often where I leave the creatures still hidden when we start combat. I think that's the problem. And I think that's how I've usually solved it, is I just have, if a hidden creature triggers combat, then I go ahead and let it attack first. And then I'd probably let it roll initiative and attack as normal as part of the whole turn-based combat thing. Whereas I believe the way Baldur's Gate solves it, I think, is that they have the same concept, but then they don't allow that creature to then take its action on its turn, at least for that first round, I think. Is what I'm trying to remember. So this is the first Underdark and only really Underdark encounter, and then the party, and we won't really probably use this map anymore, can meet the rest of the deep gnomes here outside Little Lockford, and then they will talk to the mayor and get kind of a proper rundown. And they'll get a lot of information from Nyx, I think, in general, because we mentioned the fact that half the party can, for some reason, speak Undercommon, so they can get plenty of information there. But the mayor will be able to break it down in terms of what happened, who Tockworth is, give them the map of the town, kind of explain the whole bridge system, where the failsafe is, the fact they need the key for the failsafe. So it is a little bit of a heist, but also it's a heist within a town where there's hardly any actual people left, and there's just hostile enemies patrolling around. So that makes things a lot more dangerous. One thing we could do is roll for how often random encounters happen, and then we could also look at the individual areas and see if we want to just set up encounters there. So the first area is called Old Lockford. This is the upper left corner. This is the main gate where they first come in. I believe I put dynamic lighting on here. Yes, I did. For some reason, my doors aren't showing up right now, which I've had that's a visual error on Roll20 for some reason, but these are the doors. Like this one's actually marked as open, I think, even though it was across there. I had to kind of do a weird thing here because I figured in case there's a battle outside of the town hall building, I needed a little more street to battle on. So I took another map, turned it around, and put it next to this one, which is why it's really kind of wonky looking. And I'm trying to just fix it with dynamic lighting poorly. I am not an artist in any way, but trying to make it work somehow. Yeah, I got nothing. So yeah, from dynamic lighting, we can try and make this pretend like there's buildings there. There's that building there. I don't know. It doesn't really work right here. I guess I could always just cut this off as like maybe there's rubble or something, so the party doesn't have to explore these buildings and stuff too much. Maybe one of the houses has collapsed in these areas is probably what I'll do to fix that up. I do think, even though we're in the Underdark, that it's actually lit, right? We looked that up before. Town is well maintained. Bridges, buildings, district elevations, exterior lighting. The roof and walls of Little Lockford are bathed in a fiery hue thanks to the magma that fills the lake and heats the town. The town's power station generates electricity that powers street lamps in every district, although the street lamps have gone out in Cavemouth. These lights can be switched on and off from control. So is it more interesting? Yeah, I should put an image of a house right there. Is it more interesting that the lights are on or off? It would kind of add to the creepy factor if they're off. And that would make turning the power back on mean even more. Because they wouldn't be off the whole time. The players would be able to turn them back on. But would it make sense that Tockworth would want to keep the power on and keep everything running also? It's not like it's a what's that, Westworld situation where it's just only the automatons have taken over. They're still they're non-sentient. I mean, they're all controlled and run by one cyborg gnome. And I guess I could have some of them, because you can turn each district, I think, off and on individually. I'd have to look at that section. Because it says Cavemouth is off, which is the one section they probably won't go. That's the lower left one where even the mayor's like, yeah, don't fucking go there. It's full of monsters and shit. And none of the primary main quest stuff is there. The only reason they would go down there is because if they want to take the buckets that slowly, this conveyor belt only goes counterclockwise. Let me look up L6 again. Power station. Yeah, next to the map are several switches, one for every bridge and district, one for the slag line, and one for the power station. There's one switch for each of Little Lockford's 6 districts. The street lamps in districts can be shut off by turning that district switch to the left or switched on by turning a switch to the right. So you can actually have individual districts on or off. So maybe it's best to have the entrance on. Just because, if you're doing the beginning of a horror, like, creepy town situation, it's not really horror, but, like, I feel like the first area should be the least bad in general. That's how we balance things, right? Probably definitely have the power on, because I think Tixie is either in the lower right or the middle, which is... Actually, I forgot the name of these places. Let's see. The Overlook and Smolder Town, I think, would for sure be on. The rest of them, we could go either way. The Overlook is the middle section where basically her fortress, the security center, is. And then Smolder Town is where, like, the bar is and where her failsafe is, and just seems like the area that she would be frequenting the most and would be lit up. So those two would probably be on. Yeah, maybe we could actually have the rest of them off. And that's something that would also be another, like, sub-quest for the party, is turning the power on would also allow them to move the bridges in different directions, but also would flip the lights back on. So actually, now I'm thinking that maybe I am leaning towards having the power be off for the first couple areas, and then that would be more dramatic for them to be able to turn it on. So, dynamic lighting. Well, let's turn that. Turn dynamic lighting on, but leave daylight mode off. Make sure that's on all these places. That one's on. On. I don't think I've even messed with the dynamic lighting in all these other places. Just because I know it'll take us, I just need to get that first area done. And this one is actually more set up like a traditional dungeon crawl, honestly, than the last two missions have been, because the party has to start somewhere and they can only go from there. It's not like they can just waltz in and kind of explore the whole space, because it's a big, dangerous area. So in that case... Okay, so right now it's dark and there's no light in here whatsoever. If they were, for some reason, I mean, they can turn on the lights and for some reason make it back here in the context of the adventure, while things are still hostile, then I'll have to go back and add lights to the street lamps, which thankfully they are on the map, which is nice. Oh, the doors are back. That's weird. I fixed the visual bug somehow. Oh, I bet because dynamic lighting was off. Maybe that's why, because I literally turned that on. Maybe it's not a bug. Interesting. Even though it lets me put it on there, it doesn't recognize it unless dynamic lighting is actually on. Okay, that's good to know. So yeah, I'll have to go back and put the lights on. But that would be a challenge they have to do at first. Is they have to do with the fact that it is going to be pitch dark until they turn the lights on. That's something the mayor can mention, is the fact that, hey, we've got lights in here, but, because of the power and the grid system, they may be off. And you do get a chance to turn them on at least. According to the map that he gives them, he says they can find potions in the town hall. So they will probably go there. They find some dead deep gnomes in there. From Mayor Broadfoot's office, characters can retrieve 4 potions of healing, 2 flasks of alchemist's fire, and 1 use of dust of disappearance, which is pretty cool. So we've got 2 opportunities for attacks, because... I believe it mentions that every time they exit a building or enter a new district, we roll a d6 and a roll of 1 or 2, or one if the characters are trying to be stealthy. But that's all characters, and I think they got rid of group checks in 2024. I don't remember what the exact... Maybe we can actually look up group check. Not that we got rid of it, but I think there was a thing where they mentioned... Let's just see what they say. Resolving outcomes is what it's called. Okay, this is the thing I wanted to see. Group checks aren't appropriate when one character's failure would spell disaster for the whole party, such as if the characters are creeping across a castle courtyard while trying not to alert the guards. So the obvious example is stealth does not make for a good... So by the way, group check is when you only need half the party to succeed on a check. That's when everybody's trying to accomplish something together. And the most skilled character can cover for characters who are less adept at the task. So, for example, you're all trying to climb up a wall or something, or just whatever is happening here. You just need half the group to succeed. But it specifically says they aren't appropriate if one person fucking up can spell disaster, which stealth is the obvious example of that. In that case, one noisy character will draw the guard's attention. There's not much that stealthier characters can do about it, so relying on individual checks makes more sense. Similarly, don't use a group check when a single successful check is efficient, such as the case when finding a hidden compartment with a perception check. So that's important to note. So we can't really use group checks here, assuming everybody's exploring the districts together. It's every individual person is making a stealth check, which I guess does determine if people can begin combat hidden, maybe? I'm not sure how that exactly would work. Or is it just determining if... Because, like, what happens if some characters... Unfortunately, it doesn't even mention if the characters are trying to be stealthy. It doesn't mention any, like, rules for that. Like, okay, most likely they're trying to be stealthy, but are they successfully stealthy is the question. Because that does matter whether they get a 1 in 6 chance or a 1 in 3 chance of getting an encounter. But it's every time they enter, just which I definitely wouldn't count that when they're first entering the town. Let's not even bother throwing an encounter at them that early. So the first time they may get an encounter is upon exiting the town hall building, which could be a good opportunity because that's a building with free loot. So that could be a good chance to set up an encounter. In other words, like, how much do I want to roll versus just kind of script some encounters just to, you know, start softening them up. I also have to think about how many I want to throw at them and what combination of creatures I want to throw at them. The baseline Clockwork Defender is kind of this hound creature, which has an electrified bite, but it's its only attack. Kind of has the stat block of a tough, I guess. And then the one I was thinking of adding is the Clockwork Enforcer, which is an animated armor with some more abilities. It's got a net and a sleep gas canister. Basically can cast sleep on a recharge. It's kind of some funsy things it can do. And then there's also the Observer, which I think that literally just has like a thing where it sees people. Maybe it can do something interesting, like have one-time use of Fairy Fire. Could be interesting for a thing that like thematically scans people and kind of lights them up as targets or something. Maybe like the Fairy Fire functionality could do that. And would certainly be a nasty debuff for the party. Although then you think, does this creature then have to concentrate on Fairy Fire? Because that's how players have to work, and this creature is very easy to take out. But it could be an interesting combination. So I may add some stuff to... Because it does seem like all these creatures are just not that powerful. And I do want to be cognizant about not necessarily slowing the party too down with these encounters. But that is what this whole mission is about. It's about making... Because there's not really like scripted encounters in here until you get all the way down to the lower right corner. It's basically all these like random encounters with these creatures. So that's why I'm thinking I need to make them more interesting and be prepared to like use them in multiple ways and multiple combinations of creatures. So that might be the first possible use of an encounter would be upon exiting this town hall. And maybe you can kind of average like one encounter per district might actually be, although that's actually going to be way more than what the thing suggests, I think. Let's see. So if there's 1, 2, I'm counting districts and buildings they possibly enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's just count up to the power station. So that's 8 possible encounters. If we include the town hall building in Old Lockford, the Abbey at Halfway Isle, and then the power station, the infirmary, and the prison in Turbine Heights. I'm including a district as 1, and then each building as 1, so that's a total of 8 possible encounters. So if we were to just say roll a 1d6 8 times and see how often it comes up as a 1 or a 2, basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we hit 1 twice and 2 once. So out of 8 rolls, we hit an encounter 3 times. So yeah, that actually does average about once per district, because that's 3 districts. Okay, I feel better about that. If we ignore the whole trying to be stealthy thing, we'll say that trying to be stealthy will just allow those party members to potentially start the battle hidden. Maybe that would be a big advantage, because then they could get possibly advantage if somehow they're like kind of out. It'd be like Baldur's Gate if like the rest of your party starts combat and you're not in. Although actually Baldur's Gate does it differently, where it's um you're just totally not in turn-based combat mode if you're not in combat, and thus you can do whatever the fuck you. And then basically you can do whatever action you want outside of initiative. That would be really hard to do in D&D mechanics. And then you actually start combat once you've done your thing. When you join initiative, then. Oh, I gotta stop drinking this coffee. It's gotten really not as delectable. So yeah, I think I like. Although it's gonna be harder to ambush them on the halfway aisle because it's a very small location. Yeah, it's very. I mean, I guess once they exit the building, if there's literally nobody in there, then maybe you could have a patrol crossing here. But maybe instead I'll actually have the enemy inside the building. A few like rooting around inside because they're still trying to find the Abbey guy, the abbot, I guess, who's hiding out in here. I think he's melded into stone. So maybe we'll do the encounter in the building here, and then at Turbine Heights, we'll have the patrol just somewhere around. And I also like the idea of having the party, once they turn on things at the the power station, that actually might draw a pretty big fight. Because that like draws the attention of maybe all the patrols in this Turbine Heights area. So that would be another good opportunity for a battle. So it helps for my planning purposes that I can kind of figure out like where the battles are going to be. So tentatively, let's see, encounters would be exiting the town hall at Old Lockford, inside the Abbey at Halfway Isle, and then assaulting the power station once activated at Turbine Heights. And each of those patrols should probably include all 3 stat blocks, maybe just different combinations of them, with the power station one being the biggest one. And the parties, I don't think I really want them to long rest as much as possible here. I mean, we went through the entire last mission without a long rest. That's not true. We did do scouting first, and then we long rested. But also, like you all know, we hardly did any fighting, whereas this one is going to be primarily fighting and combat. So it's a little bit different here. Now, they're all going to be level 5. That's a huge jump. And it will be tricky to see how much exactly they have to do. Because basically main quest wise they have to get to, because they could even take this slag line and then ignore a lot of the right side stuff. So unfortunately I have to play in some of Cave Mouth, I guess, as well. But they're not gonna have, I mean, I would assume they want to go to the power station as early as possible, and from there probably go to the Overlook, turn on all the power, make sure the bridges are functional, and then either go to Smolder Town or Overlook, which I'm guessing Overlook, because that's where they find the... Well, that's where I'm going to move the key to. Originally, it was right next to the failsafe, which is fucking stupid. So I think it needs to be more interesting by having that in a different location and force them into that location instead, which is L12. Which I think I have a map for that. I just haven't put it in Roll20 yet. Enormous hollowed-out stalactite with luminous clock faces built into it. A hollowed-out central chamber contains Little Lockford Security Center. Facility is surrounded by roughly hewn chambers containing magnificent fungi gardens. Characters can use the control consoles in areas L6 and 12 to raise and lower the bridges that connect the Overlook to the... Okay, whatever. Security Center. So I guess all these are the gardens. Floor that rises toward the middle. Scores of lizards, a few of them big enough to ride as mounts, sleep and crawl on the slopes of this natural rise. Perched atop the rocky mound is a squat stone building topped with a crystal dome. Multicolored lights gleam within the dome. The cavern is home to 6 giant lizards and hundreds of ordinary lizards, all of which are docile but skittish. The giant ones are trained to serve the deep gnomes as pack animals. A character who approaches a giant lizard can use... So this will be fun for Element, I guess. Can use an action to try to keep it from running away, doing so with a successful DC 13 animal handling check. That's pretty easy. A giant lizard that doesn't run away can be used by that character as a mount. I'll probably keep that in there because we do have a druid. I don't think giant lizards are very powerful. No, they're not. Although it does have the spider climb. Oh, wait, is that? Let me look up the new giant lizard, actually. That's something they can do. Giant lizard. Yeah, they do have spider climb. That's really helpful, actually. Have a mount that can climb difficult surfaces, including ceilings. Jeez. Okay. The map provides an insert map to the security center, which I'd have to look up. Don't remember. Oh my gosh, where did I put? There it is. Tessa's Tockworth maps. What's it called? Tockworth's the security center? I don't know if I have that one. What's the middle called? Overlook? Okay. I do a map of the Overlook, and it just it's got lizards on the map. It's literally just a single room, the whole building, with like lava in the middle and a control panel. Is that what it's supposed to look like? A floor that rises toward the middle with lizards. That provides an insert map of the security center. Oh yeah, there's an insert map here. Yeah, okay, it looks like that. Just a single room. Spiral staircase on the north and south sides of the building. Climb 15 feet to a circular chamber, which you can describe to the players as follows. Containing a 10-foot square, 3-dimensional projection of Little Lockford. Oh, that's cool. That's what that is. I didn't even recognize it. It's a map. It's like a war room with a 3-dimensional map of the town. The console functions like the one on the power station. The projection of Little Lockford is a harmless illusion that matches the current state of things in town, so the bridges and the power. Okay, kind of an odd boss room. If she fled to this chamber, she's next to the console. She's attached an experimental jetpack to her body, giving her a flying speed of 30 feet and the ability to hover. She accuses the characters of being pawns and mocks their heroics. I mean, it does feel like this is kind of a boss chamber, I guess. I love her stat block, but she needs... there's no reason why a boss who commands legions of Clockworks wouldn't have some with her. And I could still have her escape to fight somewhere else. But this could be an opportunity to fight. So there's really nothing for them to... So maybe I guess this could be a boss fight with Tockworth, but the twist could be that she uses Dimension Door to disappear somewhere else. And they're like, well, fuck, because I don't think them being able to manipulate it, because they can already do it at the power station, and the power station leads them to here. But then this does give them full control. Maybe she can tease the fact that she needs... She's kind of insane. She's like, all right, I need to go take a break. I need to go grab a drink or something. And then she disappears, and the party's like, okay, well, there's a tavern in the lower right corner. Maybe that's where that is. Maybe she can leave the key behind, though. Maybe somebody wants to grab the key from her. I would already let them do that, because she would just fight them at the final area anyway. So that doesn't really change my thing too much. So yeah, we can still use this as a boss fight area, but I would definitely add some minions for her, because as much as I love her stat block, we don't want any boss to be left alone. That's never a good idea. Don't let your bosses fight alone. All right, so we'll keep that as a possible area, in which case we don't need to set up a random encounter there, because we'll already have that fight set up, and then the lizards can be a fun interaction. There are some social interactions for them in Turbine Heights and the Halfway Isle. kind of glossed over that real quick. But as I mentioned, there's an abbot, I think, in the Abbey of the Deep Brother. And I'm moving. There was actually 3 people. For some reason, all the social people are found in one location. That's also stupid. We're going to move the 2 prisoners, Slonk and Yuzik, a bugbear and a goblin boss, probably to the prison. Maybe we can come up with a fun little encounter there where they're like fighting Clockworks or something, and the party comes across them. And then Kavoda is the abbot who tried to flee Little Lockford but couldn't get out. Somehow can cast Meld into Stone, I guess, and has been using that to hide. And then maybe once the party kind of defeats the Clockworths, he kind of comes out of it. He's also got a potion of hill giant strength and a scroll of magic weapon. It's kind of random. And he's actually a pain in the ass. So the 2 prisoner guys can be useful, like kind of NPC allies, I guess, for the party. But the abbot is funny because he's kind of a pain in the ass. And he should be hated by the party. With no consequences, I guess, if you kill him or get him killed or anything. But he's also designed to kind of get the party in trouble, where he'll like cry and scream for help and all that. And thus maybe alert them to deeper dangers. I guess he would know about the town, but also the party kind of already knows everything they need to know. So I don't know if he would have any more information for them either. Oh yeah, Termite Heights is lightly obscured because of the steam overflowing to the streets. That's kind of interesting. That I'll probably forget about, no doubt. There's more potions of healing in the infirmary. A lot of them, jeez. Of course, potions of healing aren't... Once you get to level 5, you know, they're a lot less useful, but I mean, it's never going to turn that down. Yeah, and the jail is where I want to have our 2 prisoners be somewhere near the jail, probably. They haven't probably gotten too far away from this area. We already talked about the power station, where we'll have a big showdown there, I think. We can just use that town map for that. And then Smolder Town might be worth having another random encounter triggered here, but also the party is going to have at least one scripted encounter, I think. Yeah, you're designed to find Tixie at the tavern, which could be a funny, like, final battle, I guess. Maybe she's got, like, the Clockworks as, like, bartenders and stuff, and she's pretending like this is her town, and it just kind of feeds into, like, more of this delusion she has, maybe. Where she's, like, building friends and creating them or something. All very this, like, macabre thing that, I don't know, maybe I can go with that. If it's worth having a fight there. Or maybe maybe partly just a social encounter too. Because once the party already has a big boss fight and then she teleports away, maybe it's worth just having a social encounter to kind of solve that issue. And the actual workshop, which I do have a different map for, although it's just the corner of this build, which is also just like one big building, it looks like. That is L9. Where's L9? There it is. Yeah, so it just kind of looks like this. There is a shield guardian outside, which is pretty strong, that guards the workshop. The only bummer is about the whole tavern thing with Tockworth is like if you solve it socially and she gives over the key, then the party, like, should they still have to fight their way into the power station and do all that? Like, maybe. I guess they still have to activate the failsafe. So then the shield guardian becomes kind of a mini boss fight. Although at level 5, I'm not even sure how strong a single shield guardian is. Also, if you can see it and it's just blocking the door, you could unload. Although I'd probably allow one person to do one... I like Baldur's Gate system, where you allow one person to do one thing, and then you all roll initiative. I don't understand why you take potions as free actions, but they're powerful as bonus actions already. No, yeah, I've eliminated all my house rules for the 2024 rules for both Dragonlance and this campaign. So we are back to whatever the rule book says. So if it says it takes a bonus action to drink a potion, and that's what we've been playing as, but granted, people I don't think have had to drink hardly a freaking potion in this campaign. Just haven't had much danger or anything. But yeah, I am subscribing to whatever the rules are saying for this new campaign, rules as written. I don't think the only house rule, honestly, I've got still in play is whenever you level up, you can roll for your new hit points, but if you get below average, you can still take the average. That's, I think, the only one we're keeping going forward. Shield Guardian's got 140 hit points, 17 AC, regeneration. It only has poison immunity and some condition immunities. Blind sight of 10 feet. It says it doesn't have spell storing in the adventure. It says lacks the spell storing trait. Lacks the spell storing trait, which is kind of boring. It's like the whole thing about a shield guardian is it can unleash its a fucking random ass spell that would have stored in it. Otherwise, it's just a really powerful version of animated armor, I guess. It has 2 fist attacks. That does do extra force damage, though. 2d6 plus 4 bludgeoning plus 2d6 force damage. And then it has a protection trigger, which works like giving the wearer of the Guardian's Amulet the shield spell, which wouldn't come into play if you're just fighting it alone. Yeah. So I don't know why it says lacks the spell storing trait. That I count spell storing trait. I agree. I think having it be able to like at least like a 1, because that's the whole thing is store 1 spell level 4 or lower. And I feel like you could have it unleash a 4th level lightning bolt, for example, which is pretty thematic. It just has like a giant it's the Iron Man like ion cannon where it just like fires out of its chest or something. Just one big ass move to start a fight, which is very similar to what the Bone Naga did in their one battle in the last mission as well. And then inside, the only thing that really guards it is the animated armor, which at that point it's almost pointless. And then there's technically the area is trapped. We have a Crown of Madness spell if you approach, which again, all that feels weird if you like don't step into the area without combats. Like, what's the point? I guess you could have a player go crazy and fight, but honestly, it just seems superfluous at that point. And also, after beating a Shield Guardian, it feels tedious to just fight 2 animated armors like inside the workshop as well. So maybe it's better to just have the Shield Guardian inside here guarding the failsafe, so that they force the party to fight in these small room, because that usually benefits the DM versus the players, and then have kind of a final boss fight encounter there with maybe the Shield Guardian and even the 2 animated armors like still guarding this area. Assuming they've dealt with Tockworth already, which I think they have. Yeah, I think I will edit out the lacks. I don't know why it says that. Like, is it trying to make it easier on the players? Like, come on, man, they're level 5, and this is designed for level 5. We are going to be caught up finally to the mission, so I don't plan on making this easier for the party. Although it will be interesting to try to pace how often to do those encounters, because that's the big difference in this adventure. Is there's not like a scripted like here's what's in this room of the dungeon, here's what's in this room of this dungeon. It's just here's this town, and then here's about how often the party should encounter these wandering monsters. And I'm already looking at souping up the wandering monsters because I think they're also undercooked. So weirdly, I think this whole adventure is actually a little bit on the easy side for level 5. Although one thing that will make a big difference in that is deciding if the party will be able to long rest at any point. Certainly they can short rest a bunch in here. But I'm tempted to not let them long rest at all while they're in here, which would be, I think, the right way to go. But I also think that is going to do it for this craft. We made it through the whole thing. My stomach is churning from just all kinds of... I think I drank too much coffee. But I'll live. So that will do it for this week's, or this Thursday edition of Crafting the Golden Vault. If you enjoy the content, please check out patreon.com/WargamingLive. Rogue Watson. Shout out to Planet Patrons, Joe, Will, Thomas, Brandon, Genocide, Roleplayer, Roll, Christopher, Big Nut, John, Nathan, Andrew, Stephanie, Jason, Spuds, Warning Mill, C, Tom, the Dogs, Marcus, Hugo, Sasha, John, Jealous Guy, Zim, Jesse, Dante, How About Dem, Nick, Shiny, Chris, and Robert, and Gold Patrons, RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Diddles, Lounge, Rob, Nathan, Scott, Rufus, Jerry, Glenn, and Mark. I'll see you all for D&D tomorrow.